Hey everyone, Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Mayor's Table. With me today is Farmington Chief of Police Steve Hebbe. We'll be talking about House Bill 4, the Roundhouse, and things happening here with law enforcement in the Four Corners. Hey everyone, Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Mayor's Table. We're into 2021, and with me today, longtime guest of the show, big fan, me personally, of yours, Farmington Police Chief Steve Hebbe. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for
Appreciate
joining
being
us.
here.
Yeah, well, it's always a pleasure and an honor to have the police chief. You are you're a dignitary of sorts here, and we are very proud to have you. But we wanted to have you on the show to talk a little bit about stuff that's going on in Santa Fe. Obviously, our legislature is in session. It's a 60-day session. I don't know the bills I went through this morning. I mean, I don't know. It's like 500 bills or some unbelievable amount. But I know there's some specific ones that are very concerning to you, to public agencies all across this state. And I wanted to take a little bit of time to maybe talk about that and some other things that are happening here with our local law enforcement agencies. So thanks again for being here. But let's start with House Bill 4. This is one that's gotten a little bit of media to it for many different reasons. Kind of what are your takes and the highlights of that bill that are concerning to you?
You know, HB 4 was an answer to some of the protests we saw this summer. They focused heavy on qualified immunity and removing qualified immunity to hold bad actors, quote unquote, accountable. By them personally being able to be sued. So that was the genesis of the idea. And where it is now from where it was is it is expanded greatly in some ways, and then it's gone a different direction, so it doesn't do what it says it was originally going to do. So it expanded in that it's not just police officers now. So it was police initially. Now it's any government official anywhere doing anything. So obviously the target of who could be sued under this in state court becomes massive. That's local, that's county, that's state government. Any official doing anything. So not just aimed at the police now. But then it went a different direction this fall with the Civil Rights Commission. The Civil Rights Commission was legislated by the legislature in the special session that they should convene one. The governor appointed a task force together, called it the Civil Rights Commission, and they studied this issue during the fall. I testified in front of them. I think there were 9 members. I think their vote was 5-4 to go with qualified immunity. But what was clear to go with removing qualified immunity.
I was going to say.
But what was clear was they have now abandoned you're personally responsible. Now the city will pay for the lawsuit against the individual employee. Well, first of all, that's what qualified immunity is.
Yes.
You can only be sued, and the government is the one backing you in this, as long as you're functioning under the proper color of authority and the proper rules that you're supposed to in whatever field that you're in. So they now have essentially made it from the employee's perspective. Well, the government's still going to pay for it if I get sued. So there isn't personal accountability, right? So they took the idea that they were so militant about that we need to hold these bad actors personally accountable. They got rid of that, and then they said, hey, you know what? If we can do this to just the police, what if we expanded it and made it to every government official anywhere? And so you're hearing from boards on land boards and things like that in small towns across New Mexico that now realize, holy cow, we could be sued massively. And the cap now, they had no cap when this started, and they just introduced a substitute bill this last Monday that now is capped at over $2 million. So this will be a very, very difficult swallow for communities, especially smaller communities across New Mexico. And that's why you saw the Albuquerque Journal take out an editorial against it.
Right. Well, I thought the editorial was very, very concisely written. And to the point that you made, the original House Bill 4, which is the Civil Rights Act, had no cap
Right.
So, which if you consider the fact that, we have a budget here in the city of Farmington, every year we have to make sure that that money goes towards the services for the public.
Right.
We, of course, account that there may be some lawsuits that need to be paid within that. But to have a no-cap option gives you the nuclear option of what juries are awarding, and can be really dangerous.
Right.
And frankly, could impact your ability to have insurance.
Yes.
I know that the Association of Counties here in the state obviously vehemently against this because they insure, I think 28 of the 33 counties.
Right.
The Municipal League also insures a lot of the municipalities. And from somebody who comes from the private side of insurance, we also insure public entities here. And our private companies are looking at it going, okay, well, we're paying really close attention because if New Mexico goes this way, it's going to change our ability to provide, the premiums are going to go up. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Oh, yeah.
Albuquerque mayor he got a group of us together to talk about this, and really it came down to needing to reach out to those state electeds to explain, here's the realities of how this is going to work. Now, from the early parts of this, you had offered your services, and being as a chief, police chief, and having that kind of immediate knowledge and understanding of how these things, qualified immunity works, and really, in my mind, when the Civil Rights Commission got together, giving them a point of view of how Farmington has managed to transition its use of force policy. Because if you really want reform, what you're saying is we need to retrain our officers or have policies in place that protect people's rights more.
Right.
And in some ways, that is what our use of force policy changes accounted for back in 2015, whenever we kind of went that route. And it was certainly a tall hill to climb. I mean, I know there was a very difficult kind of transition period for that. But, Chief, I can tell you, in my opinion as mayor, it's put us in a much better situation as a local city who is ensuring that its police force is accountable to the public for their actions. It's opened up, I should say it's minimized potential lawsuits for use of force.
Yes.
So you offered that solution to them, and it was about policy, it was about training to the policy, and it was about holding officers accountable to the policy.
Yes.
As the means to get where we really need to go. So it's a proactive approach, as opposed to just saying you're going to now be able to sue everybody who's a public official. You can just sue them, and what was was not capped, now it's $2 million, and the statute of limitations on that, I believe, is 3 years. So you have a 3-year window to do that lawsuit. It just amazes me, though. I get so disappointed every time New Mexico approaches every problem with the opportunity for plaintiffs' attorneys to go make mega millions.
Right.
Mega millions. Of course, public officials and police officers, they need to be held accountable for people's civil rights, but there's also the Civil Rights Act of the United States government. Can't these things also be heard in court?
Right.
In federal court? These same types of cases?
They can. It's not like the police aren't being sued, for cripe's sake. So really, this one, this bill is just typical of, in general, where we are with American policing. And honestly, these are not my happiest days in law enforcement. First of all, to this bill, there is not a single chief or sheriff, not one, that I am aware of, that has testified for this bill. None. So what does that tell you? When the people that are in charge of stuff, when the people that are actually doing the job, so there isn't any of those legislators who have disciplined more officers than I have. There's none of those legislators that have terminated more officers than I have. So when you create a bill and you don't involve any of the people that actually are on the ground leading these organizations, how can that possibly be effective? And then secondly, okay, let's pretend you go with your little fantasy that somehow the police are going to be better if we allow them to be sued massively. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come back to you the next year and I'm going to say, I need money. I need money for training. I need money for policies. I need money to hold officers accountable. Instead, what did we do last year? Last year we passed the Public Employees Bargaining Act. So every union in the state of New Mexico now has binding arbitration. So how are you going to hold officers accountable when binding arbitration is the very font of all sorts of problems in getting rid of problem employees? But they didn't listen to that. And so they passed it, and it made people happy, people that supported them. But now here we are a year later. You want me to hold officers accountable, and you created the vehicle that'll make it more difficult. But you're not listening to the people that are actually doing the job.
Right. And the money that you're going to need for the training with these lawsuits, that money's going to go out the door.
Well, and the state runs the law enforcement academy. The state is responsible for the basic training of entry-level officers in New Mexico, and they've funded it. It's 35 to 40% staffed. I mean, that's obscene. That is their responsibility, and they are failing at it. And then they couple that with the Law Enforcement Academy also was the one responsible for decertifications. And they have a backlog of over 130 cases there. It's years. So don't talk to me about accountability when you're not doing your job first. But yeah, if we sue everybody, it'll be good to go.
Right. That just seems to be the solution. I'm about the proactive solution in my mind. And I think in any organization that is successfully ran, it starts in the front with the hiring and the training and the accountability, and not allowing opportunities for individuals. And I get what you're talking about with binding arbitration. Somebody who does get disciplined, the union has the ability now to jump in and say, no, we don't like that discipline,
right,
and we're not going to support it, and we're going to fight it. And there's some of these union cases are just they're mind-boggling to me. The minimum amount of discipline that may have happened. And anyways, that's a whole different subject.
And all of this is with the backlash from the Floyd protests. And I get it. I do. We do have to do better. We are committed to that here. Yes, we did some things several years ago with our use of force, and we've continued to do things with our use of force review team that have positioned Farmington better. We obviously need to continue to push and to be a better agency. I absolutely get that. But about 5 days ago, we had an officer killed here in New Mexico. I mean, shot by a hardened felon with a long criminal history as he sat in his car. He's got 3 kids and another one on the way. And you just don't hear the conversation about the police officers that are putting their lives on the line. Here in Farmington, we had officers respond to a subject we knew was struggling with mental problems. We did our level best to de-escalate it. We just released that body cam footage. But he throws Molotov cocktails at our officers. Now, in 30 years of policing, I've never had that happen.
I'm going to ask you that question. How often do you see a Molotov cocktail coming to play here in the U.S.?
So, when these legislators and even some of the activists, I ask them, how often have you had somebody throw a Molotov cocktail at you? How often have you had somebody shoot at you? Because it didn't go well for our New Mexico State Police the other day, and a Las Cruces officer is still on the mend from that incident. So at the same time that we're talking hard about more police accountability, we absolutely have to be recognizing the sacrifice that our men and women in blue are making every day. And I'm not talking about chiefs and sheriffs who are at the top of this thing and they're essentially just sitting around talking on TV shows. I'm talking about the officers that every day are responding to stuff like even Super Bowl Sunday. We had a subject who was shooting at occupied dwellings. Neighbors are calling us. Our officers respond out there on Super Bowl Sunday when everybody else is at home enjoying the Super Bowl. And they were able to talk him down. They left the scene briefly. When he went back in the house, they came back when he started shooting again. He's calling for the police to be called back to the scene. They do go back, and they're able to de-escalate him and get him out. But there is just not this recognition of, man, they did a great job there. But there is, every failure is magnified times 10, and we come up with 4 or 5 new bills to really rein in the police. And it's really painful to me personally to watch this.
And I think too, Chief, if you're trying to recruit individuals into your profession,
how do you do it?
And New Mexico just continues to find its. And if you look at crime statistics for New Mexico, property crime statistics are very, very high.
Yep.
Because we basically try to decriminalize everything. You don't get to go to jail anymore for nonviolent crimes. We release you right back out on the street.
Right.
We've seen that happen. The issues that happens right here in our own city, certainly in the bigger cities, I can't imagine. But I hear about it.
But if as a community or as a society we've decided we're gonna go soft on property crime, okay, I get that. But going soft on violent crime, and you can see the violent crime rate in New Mexico is high. We have a lot of it. Just last week, the day that officer was killed, he shot 2 officers. He injured other officers. There was another incident with a Deming police officer who got into a shooting. There was another incident where a New Mexico State police officer was dragged in a car off a traffic stop and was in the hospital with a fractured leg. I mean, that was within a 24, 36-hour period. So, it's not like our officers are just going out and taking reports of shopliftings. We're having them respond, like I just described on Super Bowl Sunday, to intense calls where guns are involved, and they are doing their level best. They're 25, 26 years old. They're wearing the uniform of their community, and they don't get the support they should get. That's absolutely how I feel. They are not being supported. We are not recognizing the good work that they are doing, and we introduce bill after bill that seeks to punish the wrongdoers, but in reality punishes all of them.
Is there other bills that are coming through right now that have legs of any kind that you feel will be impactful to our police force?
We've got a couple that we're keeping an eye on. There's Senate Bill 227, which is a pretty broad-based bill. I couldn't even get into all of the things that it purports to do, but we're watching that one. We'll track that as we go along. We'll report back to the public on it. But there's a couple other ones as well. I think not as bad as 227. 227 looks like it would be a fundamental game changer to the way law enforcement operates. But I want to take a look at it, and we'll see how it goes.
And the bottom line to me is anytime there's any type of threat, no matter what that threat may be deemed, the police are the first ones to get called.
Yes.
I mean, whatever it may be, honestly. And they're expected to show up in a timely fashion and deal with that individual's problems, no matter what it is.
Right.
It could be shoplifting. It could be somebody looks like a dangerous individual. It doesn't matter what it is. And because of that context, we've become very reliant upon policing in America to provide that sense of safety and protection. And I think it's commendable for those individuals who choose to make this their career path. And I'm very thankful for the police force that we have here. And I believe most of San Juan County residents are.
I think we have strong support here.
Very, very strong support. So we appreciate the job that you do. Anything else come up here recently with local law enforcement that we need to make our public aware of?
I think what you just hit on is really the challenge that we face right now, and that's recruiting. So our numbers are not at critical levels by any means, but we're struggling to recruit. We're struggling to find good people. So honestly, if you've thought about being a police officer, the time really is now to be a police officer. And there's a siren in the background, which, maybe we'll dub that out later on. We'll see. But now is the time we need good people who are committed to their community to come in. Anybody can be a police officer. Anybody can do anything when times are easy, when money's flowing, when everybody loves you. This is a challenging time for law enforcement, but now actually is the time that we need people to step up and help the Farmington community and Farmington businesses, Farmington citizens. So consider joining FPD. We'd love to have you. And don't think for a second we're not fighting for you, because we certainly are.
Yeah. Well, Chief Hebbe, thank you for joining us today.
You, sir.
I know it's a highly emotional time right now as we're dealing with
not
things
the best
happening
days.
in Santa Fe. Well, I tell you, on the radio show that we do on a weekly basis, it's talking about things that are happening there. It's very concerning, and you certainly want to make sure that those individuals who have been elected to represent the citizens of New Mexico are being held accountable for these bills. And I certainly encourage anybody out there to get on to the nmlegis.com website. That's the website for the New Mexico legislature, and look at these bills and see who the sponsors are. And if there's something that concerns you about it, they need to be contacted. They need to be reached out to. And I know a lot of folks will say, well, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to listen to me. Well, if enough people get behind something, they're going to have to listen. And so I encourage people that way to continue to hold them accountable.
Yeah, no, I agree. Your voice does matter down there. The legislators do listen, but not to individual voices. They listen to numbers. So, get yourself, get your friends, get your family on issues that are critical, that matter to you and your family. As far as ours, signing off here, police reform is a real thing. We are doing our best. We will continue to do our best to improve. But it starts with training. It starts with hiring good people. It starts with having the best policies. It starts with the state supporting us as we're trying to do those things. So if we do those things, we will have the kind of police force that we want to have throughout New Mexico, not just here in Farmington. But when we don't do those things, when we don't value the training, when we don't value attracting good people into the profession, it's a recipe for disaster.
Well, in every organization, Chief, nobody's perfect. No organization is perfect and has a perfect track record of always doing things right 100% of the time. But certainly within the scope of our ability to train and hold accountable our own officers, I think we've done a good job. Obviously, there's individuals that have made mistakes, and we've been accountable for those as well. And have taken care of those families without the need for the Civil Rights Act, have taken care of those families in those situations. Right. So it's important for New Mexicans to know there has been and will continue to be ways to make sure that individuals are made whole if they are injured by anybody really anymore. So
right.
Well, Chief, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us as well here on the Mayor's Table. We've got a whole new schedule of Mayor's Tables coming up with interviews with city staff and community members. We appreciate your viewership. Stay tuned. We'll see you here next time.